Hello and welcome to this VeeamON 2025 production. My name's Anthony Spiteri. I'm a principal analyst at Veeam, and today I've got Vito. Vito, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Anthony. Vito LoCascio with Veeam, responsible for the aggregation business and the MSP business in North America.
Excellent, Vito. So, hey, we're excited today to come and talk to you about on-demand recovery. Not only that, but resilient on-demand disaster recovery for MSPs, right? So I guess, Vito, today we're really going to articulate some of the value that Veeam has with regards to on-demand recovery. We're going to go through and talk a little bit about the history, how Veeam's been involved in this disaster recovery space, and then we're going to talk about market opportunity. But what have we got on the agenda, Vito? Go through it yourself.
Yeah, so as you said, we're going to take a little walk down memory lane to see how we got to where we are today with object storage and on-demand DR. We'll frame up the market opportunity, what it looks like for our partners, our managed service providers, our resellers, and how they can service their clients and the opportunity there, as well as highlight some Veeam and some partner innovations that we've built to collaborate on-demand recovery, and then you'll get to see it in action with a partner demo.
Excellent. All right, let's kick it off. Let's get into it. So, I think the first thing to talk about is Veeam's history with VCSPs, our Veeam Cloud and Service Providers, and then cloud-based recovery. It's obviously something that our service providers saw great value in the Veeam platform from day zero, right? Like, as soon as people worked out that you could use Veeam for backup, providers looked at it and said, can we monetize this for our own backup purposes, right? Infrastructure as a service, backup as a service, DR as a service. So we've got a rich history with that. In fact, Vito, I was part of that, right? In the early days, I've been at Veeam now for nearly 9 years, but before that, worked at the service provider and actually was part of what you're seeing here in 2014 when we were actually market launch partner for Veeam Cloud Connect Backup. It was really exciting times because for the first time, Veeam had an offering which a provider could leverage that made offsite backup really easy, right? And networking was complex. The actual backup repository, the actual part of getting the data from an on-premises location, from the business, from the infrastructure up to the cloud wasn't always easy. And Veeam democratized that massively with our Cloud Connect Backup. We took that a step further in 2015 when we launched Cloud Connect Replication. So again, from the point of view here, we started with a really simple cloud target using Cloud Connect Backup, which is really for just a repository. Let's just do the 3-2-1 rule of backup. Let's stick a bit of data up there so we can recover it just in case something happens on-prem. When we moved to Cloud Connect Replication, that's when we decided to say, well, let's now think about a situation where we can, yes, get data off-site, but can we then do it in a way where we have a lower RPO, lower up restore point objective, which means that we can have a disaster recovery situation. And what we did with that is we built in great techniques and features and enhancements that allowed us to control the networking, control the end-to-end automation of the recovery process, do testing, and effectively made that simple as well. We had the network extension appliance. So the technology that we offer to our service providers allowed them to create this service, as a service, right? This is taking a very simplistic look over the last sort of 10 years, I suppose, Vito. But when you look at what we're doing now with continuous data protection and Veeam Data Platform, when we brought in CDP, Cloud Connect Replication was based on snapshotting, right? So the best case scenario that you could do there was 15 minutes. You could probably get it down to 5 minutes for the RPO. So the amount of time that you had before, you could do from a point of view of recovering. So from when you put it up to the cloud, 5 to 15 minutes. And then we introduced CDP, continuous data protection, which effectively got back to seconds. So that created another tier of possibilities for our cloud providers to offer. So this is all to say, Vito, we've had a really strong history of offering solutions with our partners, with our cloud and service providers.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think as you're walking through this, that was what's in the back of my mind is Veeam is innovating, but we're innovating for our partners and our mutual customers. So along the journey, we're creating Cloud Connect, which allows our service providers to do manage DR, right? And with CDP, it allows them to wrap their services to serve their clients and reduce those RTO, RPO times. So all the while, we've had a long-standing commitment to our partner community to provide a scalable, modern DR solution.
Absolutely.
And now, we've taken it to the next step, right? Which is building an on-demand DR with object storage.
That's right. So, with regards to what we talk about when we say what is on-demand DR versus DR as a service. So, this is an interesting one, and we're gonna later on, Vito, point to some numbers which highlight a bit of a gap in the market at the moment and what we're seeing. Traditional DRaaS is really what I talked about. You need always on infrastructure at the provider end. So there's a sunk cost and there's an overhead of having to manage some sort of cluster to actually have the replicas sitting on for that point in time when they're needed, when a disaster strikes, when they hit that red button. So from that perspective, traditional DR as a service, and it's interesting to talk about it in a traditional sense where we've gotten to that point, right?
Right.
Higher upfront cost for the provider, higher ongoing cost for the provider, but also for the tenant, right? Because the tenant has to pay for that luxury of having hardware, infrastructure, networking ready to go. Traditional DRaaS, though, is ideal, like I said, because of the low RPO nature of it for mission critical workloads, tier 0, tier 1 workloads. So when you're tiering your workloads, I've talked about this for a number of years since we brought out these technologies, is that when CDP came in, you could really start to think about the top 1 or 2% of your workloads, of your VMs or whatever it might be, your applications. That's what you want for CDP. And then from a traditional,
you're talking about mission critical environments, Fortune 100. I mean, the enterprise customers that cannot afford to be down for 15 minutes, half hour, right? This is really important workloads in customers that cannot afford any downtime.
Absolutely. And typically what I saw is that it was driven by regulatory and compliance, right? This is usually in the old days, right? When I say the old days, like 10 to 15 years ago, when it was the banks, it was the financial institutions, because they had to have some sort of DR site as a regulatory tick box, which slowly has made its way more into the norm of even the SMB or the SME as well, right? But this is where we're getting at with on-demand recovery. So that was traditional DRaaS. Again, high upfront costs, a little bit more complex, networking, everything. On-demand recovery really is what it suggests. The infrastructure is sitting there, not really in a state of readiness, but it's in a state of you can bring it up when you want to. That's the on-demand component of it, right? So typically we talk about what the cloud was built for, being able to spin up something really quickly, swipe a credit card and have it up and running, right? That's the idea of how we're leveraging on-demand DR. So when I talk about that from on-demand DR, I'm going to hit on it later with things like bare metal servers and cloud workloads. If you think about VMware Cloud and AWS, when that came out, that was a classic on-demand software-defined data center where you could put in your credit card. You have to wait a couple of hours for the back-end provisioning to happen. But after 2 hours, you had your whole workload there. You had your whole infrastructure, the vCenter, the storage, the networking, all configured. That's on-demand. And then what that does as well is that significantly reduces the overhead and lowers the cost. It's optimal for these workloads that can tolerate a shorter recovery window versus that really low RPO. So if you think about 80% of your workloads or applications, would you wait 10 to 15 to 20 minutes to have them recovered? Absolutely. And what it's enabling, it's taken advantage of modern cloud orchestration and automation. So again, when I talk about those older days, we didn't have that infrastructure as code. We didn't have the cloud-based automation that is so part of everyone's day-to-day these days in IT, right? And this is what on-demand DR can enable.
Yeah. And from a partner perspective, a lot of our partners have been waiting for this, right? Their customers didn't demand the mission-critical times and costs that go with that. We'll talk about later. I mean, this is significantly lower, and it democratizes DR, making it more affordable for that mid-market space and for partners that serve that mid-market space. So it's the technology has caught up and has really provided options to our partners.
Absolutely. So if we have a look at that summarize in terms of,
Sorry
There we
about that.
go. Got it. That's all right. Not a problem. Just showing that we're live, right? Here's on-demand DR versus DRaaS. From the look of it, from side by side, right? The cost, DRaaS high-ish, high to high-ish. Obviously, this is absolutes, right? So you can do a DR as a service with relatively decent cost. So we're not denying that. But when you look at it compared to on-demand DR, this is what we're talking about. So a lower cost to have it basically up and running, ready to go. And we'll talk a little bit about how that works a bit later on. Infrastructure. For DRaaS, dedicated, always on. That's what I was talking about. You need that physicality of the cluster there to handle the replicas. When you're talking about on-demand recovery, you're provisioned as needed. And we're going to talk about how. We gave a bit of a look at it in the next slide, leveraging object storage. Complexity, moderate to high. It's moderate to high with DRaaS because you do need to have that initial configuration, the replica settings, all that kind of jazz set up initially. For on-demand DR, you're really just backing up to a location and then recovering it. It's almost that simple. Stability. I think stability is interesting, but it's, more if we akin this to what's it used for, mission critical, because when you've got DRaaS, you know that your replicas are there ready to go. That's peace of mind. So from a RPO perspective, that's important. From on-demand recovery, broader range, more cost sensitive. I think that's a good way to look at it, Vito.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think this really lays out the differences. One, you're managing your infrastructure, you're patching it, you're securing it, you're powering it, all that goes along. And in a situation where you need to have instant recovery, that's what you need. If you can't wait, minutes or hours, but if you need to do it in seconds or minutes. But yeah, the simplicity, the provision on demand is a refreshing option for customers that have the ability to have minutes and hours of recovery as opposed to seconds and minutes.
Yeah. All right. So we alluded to this. So what is enabling this tech to be democratized and viable today for on-demand recovery versus DRaaS? And it's object storage is really there's two, right? But object storage is definitely the biggest component of this. And we started to look at this when Veeam brought in our cloud tier. You remember, Vito, we brought in cloud tier, part of the capacity tier, the archive tier, all in our scale-up backup repository. We then introduced standalone object storage repositories. So from a Veeam perspective, if you've got Veeam backup and replication, being able to target a object storage repository became really sort of attractive to our customers, right? And to tenants as well of MSPs. Now, the reason for this is because bang for buck, it's quite cheap, right? I remember back in the early days, we used to talk about this from a comparison perspective. A typical sort of target for Cloud Connect backup was probably about $4 to $5 per gig, right? Roughly speaking. I mean, it could be cheaper, it could be more expensive, depending on how you kind of architected it. But then when you looked at object storage, especially when we looked at S3 back in the day, that was 0.02 cents per gig. It's just magnitude cheaper. And when you're talking, I remember, people talking about pennies in the dollar. I mean, I would say cents in the dollar, but I'll Americanize it and say pennies in the dollar.
We understand cents over here, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I always talk about pennies in the dollar, but when you're cost sensitive,
you just can't say penny wise, pound foolish to the American audience. But
there you go. I won't say that. Then everyone else who's not American, they'll get that. But what we're trying to get at there is that cost comes into play, no matter which way you look at it. Especially in this day and age, if any organization can save some dollars, then they're going to look at it. And this is what made object storage so attractive for a backup target. It's why it became popular. But then what we realized, though, is that we can also leverage the speed of the technology. The internet speeds became quicker. As I'm speaking to you now, I've finally in Australia, I've got a 1 gig, download and a 400 meg upload connection in my office, in my home, right? Which when I started in this gig doing backup as a service, most of our clients are on ADSL or ISDN links, right? So the fact that our communication mechanisms have become so much quicker has enabled all these technologies to take steps and build on top of itself to get where we are today. And so object storage in itself is quick. You can upload lots of data quicker to object storage, but then more importantly, to recover. Like if you're recovering into a cloud, you basically get line speeds. Again, some of the testing I did with VeeamON Cloud and AWS in those SDDCs in those early days, using our object storage technology, we were getting like literally gigs per second download from our object storage repositories to be able to recover. And that's the big difference with regards to, is it worth looking at DRaaS or is it looking at on-demand recovery? Because if you can effectively download from object storage at line speeds, it almost negates the fact that you need to do an instant replica, right? Because if you can recover quick and restore quickly, that's going to adhere to some RTOs and also RPOs. That's the big part of why object storage has unlocked this.
Yeah, it's been the foundation. It's been the catalyst to allow this on demand to go forward. So I agreed.
Yeah.
And bare metal,
also,
right? In a similar manner.
Yeah. Bare metal is the next part. I also, just before we move to bare metal, just quickly, I did forget to talk about the fact that object storage from a security perspective as well has become important. So immutability, versioning, stuff that we've had in the product since day dot, being able to do that and archive, protecting from ransomware attacks at scale with massive amounts of data. Object storage is perfect for that as well. So I just wanted to sort of tie that bow into that last object storage point of view as well.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in the vault as well with Veeam Data Cloud Vault.
Absolutely. So then, bare metal is the last part of this. So, think of what's happened with cloud-based workloads in the public cloud, AWS, Azure, Google, all those public clouds have a bare metal element that you can provision machines. When I say bare metal, you just get a server and you can put whatever you want on there, right? But what we've seen over the past 5 years is that lots of service providers have moved into bare metal as a service. And what that unlocked is the ability for anyone to provision a literal piece of hardware for their own use within minutes, and then install an operating system or install a hypervisor and carve it up for your own use. So now you're starting to see the pieces that are coming together here, right? You've got the technology of Veeam, you've got the object storage, and now you've got this automated way to provision hardware. So all of a sudden, the first pain point that I talked about with regards to DR as a service in terms of the cost of holding that hardware goes away. So you're not paying anyone for the hardware to be just in case. If you can do on-demand bare metal, that means you're only going to pay for it when it's turned on.
Right.
And that's a hardware piece of bare metal.
Right. It's like
absolutely
you're renting it. You're paying for what you use as opposed to maintaining an entire data center and all that goes with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. You're basically stopping all those just for fun costs, like of running those infrastructures there. And for organizations, that is a very, very attractive, or it should be a very attractive reason to consider on-demand DR, right? Because you're not paying for anything but the storage. You're paying some licensing, you're paying some maybe for the connection, you're paying for what's sitting on the object storage, but we've talked about how that's fundamentally magnitudes cheaper than what you've been paying before, but you're not paying for any compute. You're not paying for any network. You only start to pay for that when you need it. And in the demo we're going to show later, we'll talk about when that kicks in.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think the takeaway here is really clear. It's on demand gives us the speed, the flexibility, and the affordability because of all the things you're talking about, right? It's this ability to flex on as you need it. And we see this across the industry. It's great to see from a DR perspective that we've got offerings that sort of mirror the agility and the business needs of the environment that we're in right now.
That's it. Awesome. So I think, we've talked about capability, we've talked about technology. So Vito, now talk about the opportunity that exists for our partners out there to take advantage of this, what I would call perfect storm technology.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I mean, we've done some research in our cloud protection trends report from last year. We interviewed different customers and organizations, and they're telling us that 51% of them are looking for a provider to manage their backup, right? And they're not just wanting them to manage backups, but they're looking for a provider that has expertise on business continuity and disaster recovery. They're looking to focus on their core business and free up resources. They're looking for partners that are going to help them plan. Of course, cost and complexity are always important. And so there is an opportunity here. And because we've simplified it, we've opened the door to partners that have historically not wanted to maintain a data center for traditional DRaaS, but more the managed service provider that's looking for a partner like Veeam, or there's sometimes an ecosystem that Veeam helps create of various partners and SaaS solutions to help them provide a disaster recovery solution that fits the needs of their customers. So 51% are asking for a partner to manage their business. And specifically, like what kind of outcomes are you looking for? And as you can imagine, right, with ransomware threats and cybersecurity insurance needs, they need a disaster recovery plan. They need a managed service provider that's going to offer DR as a service. They're looking for vendors that they can trust, right? So this places Veeam in a very good place as the #1 backup and recovery provider in the world. And they're looking to be selective on what kind of workloads they need and the different RTOs, RPOs that they need for that. Of course, security and pricing and all of those are a factor. And here's the challenge. They're looking for partners that provide DR. That was the #1 thing. But 86 of the managed services providers that are interviewed in this survey from the State of the Market MSP, Enterprise Backup as a Service stats from this year, 86 are providing cloud backup solutions, but only 13% are providing CDP. And that's because of the higher costs, the increased complexity, and the resources that we were talking about earlier. So there's a little bit of a disconnect when you say, hey, clients, especially in the mid-market, are looking for DRaaS. They're looking for a provider that's going to offer disaster recovery solutions. But our general MSPs have not offered that, at least from a CDP perspective, for all the reasons we outlined earlier. So prioritizing and offering a scalable, resilient, on-demand disaster recovery, right? An on-demand recover from backup or an on-demand automated DR provides a really important alternative from an MSP perspective. Anthony, any color you want to add?
Absolutely. I think this is the key, right? Like we've had a great product in market for a number of years now with our CDP. We've enabled that for Cloud Connect, for VCD. We've got it out there, right? And what we've seen is that the take up hasn't been there. And I don't believe it's because the technology is bad. I believe that the market just doesn't understand exactly that they need it. Like people understand you need offsite backup. That's why that 86% is so high, right, in terms of a number for offsite cloud backup solutions. But it's not surprising that organizations, SMEs, up to even enterprise level, don't think they need CDP level replication because there's just too much to it. There's a lot of setup, there's a lot of ongoing maintenance, there's a lot of overhead to it. So I do believe while the technology is great, and I'm Vito, like I'm a strong believer of this tech. I always have been. I've talked about it. I've evangelized it for years from a product side and whatnot. I've shown it on stage. The reality, though, is that I think the market has gone past this, and on-demand DR is here to fill that gap. So we want to see that 13% get up to 86% and beyond with on-demand DR, because effectively, and here's the cool thing, if you've got cloud backup, you've got on-demand. I think that's a really interesting way to put it. And we didn't even practice that. We didn't think about that. I've just thought about that right now. And we're going to show you exactly why in the demo. If you've got backup going to object storage, you've got the ability to leverage on-demand DR.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you don't need additional hardware. You don't need additional expertise. In fact, it's probably a good segue. This is a little bit of a continuum where we engage our partners to help round out the solution for an on-demand offering. So on the very left, you have sort of cloud backup, and that's our VDC Vault. And then on the far right, you have the fully managed CDP orchestrator that is traditionally been offered by enterprises that self-manage, but also by our Veeam Cloud service providers that offer a full managed white glove DR solution. And then in between, you see some partners that are SaaS providers that round out the solution. And we'll dig into each of these, but you can kind of see from just, hey, I've got cloud backup, and now with Veeam entering into this market, you can have immutable logically air-gapped solutions for BDC Vault. And then all the way on the right, you can have the fully managed offerings. And we'll walk through kind of in between with SaaS providers like Provax and Cloud IBR. And there's others that play in this ecosystem, but we wanted to highlight a couple of them and then specifically show a demo on an automated DR solution offered by Cloud IBR. So yeah, so Veeam Data Cloud. You'll see this mentioned throughout VeeamON. There's another session that I'll be talking about with Veeam Data Cloud, specifically around M365. But if you've been paying attention to Veeam, I mean, we are moving into a BaaS first company, as well as focusing on the enterprise. You'll see that and hear that a lot. One of the things that we're really excited is the launch of Veeam Data Cloud Vault, which is secure cloud storage with immutability, with air-gapped, with the security that we need, with the global presence around the world using Azure data centers, that, as Anthony, you said, gives you the foundation to provide an on-demand DR. So now you've got cloud storage, it's fully managed, it's always immutable, it's logically air-gapped, and it's a predictable fee for a per terabyte cost. You have the ability to know your storage costs, right? And this is the easy button with pre-configured, fully managed cloud storage that's optimized for Veeam, and it's the foundation for your on-demand DR. Then if you're looking and you're an MSP, Provax is a great easy button. What they offer is a centralized multi-tenant backup management platform that does not require any hardware or configuration from the MSP. So we work with Provax a lot and recommend them. They're fully built on Veeam software, and they provide a turnkey SaaS solution. They're managing physical virtual workloads. It's built on Veeam. It's proactive monitoring maintenance. They have a lot of interesting reporting that MSPs have valued, right? They're able to send messages to your customers and say, hey, we've backed it, we've tested it, we've looked at it, it's looking good. There's flexible monthly plans, and a lot that you can bring your own Veeam licensing, right? So if you're an established service provider and you're looking to just get some support, you can continue to have direct relationship with Veeam and bring your own licensing to the equation. So we kind of talk about Provax as a partner that provides an easy button for MSPs. They understand, they've been in this business, and they understand what MSPs are looking for, and it's built around Veeam, really simplifying the offering for MSPs. And then Cloud IBR, which really is the sweet spot of the discussion that we're having today, is a partner that we work with quite often for on-demand DR solutions, right? It's fully built on Veeam, and it's automated instant backup recovery. And we're seeing this a lot with managed services providers that don't want to have the traditional data center that they're managing. They're looking for that on-demand DR. They're looking for one-button automated failover testing. And then it's the ability for managed service providers to take this service and provide it to their clients, right? They can offer fully managed backup and fully managed DR solutions with automated testing for their customers. You can also, if you're a customer that wants to self-manage, that's an option. Or if you're a managed service provider that has, 10, 20, 50, 100 customers and want to offer this to your clients, you can manage it in a multi-tenant fashion. So just to acclimate on the diagram, you've got your production environment on the left, running Veeam backup into a Veeam Data Cloud Vault cloud backup. As you said eloquently, Anthony, that's the foundation for your on. If you've got that backup in VDC Vault, you've got the foundation for an on-demand. Then their software solution is a one-click provisioning of VPN, security, network firewalls, everything you need to basically fail over your environment to a bare metal cloud environment. So the first backup test we're seeing can be provisioned and set up and deployed, begin at least in about 30 minutes for the very first one. And then the system is set up to doing monthly automated. You just get a report that says, hey, we tested your backup. Now, what's interesting is we find that a lot of times, we've got partners that have got backups and they're immutable and they're gapped and they're saved. But as soon as they go to fail over and test them, they realize that there was something wrong with the backup. And you don't want to find that out in the middle of a real disaster. You want to find that out when you're building out your DR plan. And so a lot of times they'll see there's an issue, they can fix the backup, and then that becomes sort of another safety net for making sure your backups are recoverable. And then the little dotted lines are saying, hey, if you are in the event of a ransomware attack or disaster, you can run out of that bare metal cloud for as long as you need, and then fail it back over to your production environment. But if you're just doing a monthly task, or if you want to set it up weekly or bi-weekly, it will fail over. And sometimes that could take an hour, a couple hours. And to what you said earlier, you're paying for the hardware that you use for that hour or two. And then after it's tested, failed over, it's wiped, and you're, basically back in production, and then you'll wait for the next month to do your test. So a really slick, automated, fully provisioning on demand of the hardware, and it's all built around Veeam. So a great partnership with Cloud IBR. We talked about cost earlier. Obviously, as they say, results will vary, but we're seeing sometimes this is a tenth of the cost. You can get into this solution for a 20 terabyte solution for about $9,000 annually. And it's that's just a simple kind of starting point for what on-demand. And I think that's shocking to a lot of partners that have felt that DRs price them out. So this is a recovery from backup on-demand DR solution with our partner. Anthony, I've been talking for a bit. Any commentary you want to add before we jump to the demo?
No, I reckon we'll just get back into the demo and just to show it all working as a good example.
Yeah, let's see it in real IRL, as the kids say.
All right, so let's take a look at this and see what it looks like. A beautiful, clean UI. You can see here we've got a list of providers, and these providers are typically what's going to have the bare metal services, right? So you can see a bunch of Google in here. Cloud IBR have a number of providers. We're going to be leveraging Phoenix now as a key partner here. We want to do this in an encrypted way. So you're leveraging Veeam encryption keys because we want this to be secure transfer of data. Gateways, the networking. So you can go here and set your VLANs. You've got port mapping. So when you do fail over, you're going to expose those applications straight away. We're going to show an example of that later on. We can do IPsec tunnels to connect up an actual office to the failover side, and a bunch of other configuration from the point of view of networking. Everything that you'd expect, DNS, end users, VPN users, whatever it might be. We then want to click over to bare metal access. So this is really just your ILO settings. How do you remotely connect into your Veeam and your ESX server? You can see here we've got a bunch of recoveries. Vito talked about the testing regime. In terms of what it is to start these new recoveries, you've got a few options. You've got auto shutdown, manual shutdown, and disaster recovery. The first two are there for testing, a very quick test you can do per month. You've got manual shutdown, and then you've got actual disaster recovery, which is that big red button. Once you select that, you do initiate a recovery. Obviously, at this point here, we've actually got one going because you've got a little bit of time to wait before the actual bare metal part comes up. Here, what you're seeing is the reseller component. So not only is this from a tenant perspective, but MSPs can actually come in here and provision their own customers. One of the really interesting parts, just to pause it here, that Cloud IBR actually has is that you're able to eat up a Cloud Connect repository or a repository that's been set up by a provider. What that means is that as a reseller, you can come in and connect to a repository of a tenant that you might not have ever set up before. It's a really cool little feature that I thought they brought into the product. But just speaking about the ability to do the resell again, this just allows you as the MSP to have multiple tenants and control it from a top line source. Okay, so individually a tenant can come in and do this, but the MSP also has the ability to be able to run these for their customers, their tenants as well. And that obviously offers a little bit of additional service revenue for them as well. All right. So what we want to do here is go back to recoveries. We can see we've done a bunch of these in this particular environment already. You've got an active one in process. We can see the overview of what's happened. We can see that it's running. You can see the ability here to open some support tickets built into the product, which is really important as well. You can see the sessions that are running. So you can see we've got this Cloud IBR demo. This is actually restoring a bunch of AD machines and a web service as well. You can see we've got the IP address of the ESX site host and also of the VBR host as well. So you've got a bunch of credentials here that we can use. You can see it's ready to test. So this has actually completed the failover process or the failover process. And you can see here that we've got a bunch of servers, we've got some endpoint IPs, and more importantly, some credentials. So for the VPN account, for the bare metal cloud servers, so everything that you need to be able to get and actually test the recovery points if you want. Now, again, this can be done automated. Every month, it just basically fires off a quick recovery, says everything's up and running, sends a report, and we're sweet. Or you can actually have some control over the process as well. And where this is handy for isn't just for on-demand recovery in the case of a disaster, but for testing and whatnot. So here you can see we've got this ESX server. So this ESX server is something, again, I talked about the magic of bare metal recovery. This is the magic of bare metal recovery here. So we're able to, through Phoenix Snap, it's taken an hour and a bit, 90 minutes, whatever it might take, to spin all the bare metal services up, the networking. It's actually done an automated install of ESXi onto that server. And as you can see here, we've got the virtual machines that we've recovered. So we've got an AD, we've also got the actual VBR server itself. So this is what we're looking at here in the virtual machine tab here. So the Veeam server that we provision, or that Cloud IBR provisions as part of this process, and then the actual machines that we've recovered, which have been put into your object storage, okay? So you can see the port mapping here, which we did earlier. Now this is important because the port mapping will allow you to dictate the services that are going to be up and running at the point of recovery. So copy the IP, you can see we've done a traditional HTTPS port, internal, external IP, that's part of the services that have been provisioned automatically as part of this on-demand recovery. We're going to go to that and actually visit that site to show if it's actually up and running. So let's take a look here first and see that this machine is up. We're going to log into the Active Directory server. So just to show you that it is actually running. The good thing about this, because we're running on bare metal, it's running at bare metal speed. So very, very quick and responsive. Okay, a lot of these guys will be running nested traditionally if you're running in that sort of environment. But here we're not nesting, we're actually going bare metal. So you can see that the Active Directory server is up. We're doing a few tests just to make sure that we can ping the other server here. There's a demo server, O1, just to make sure we can talk to that. It just means we've got DNS set up, we've got the user account set up, and everything like that. So both servers are up and running. So let's now take that external IP address and hit it to see if the service is up and running. And lo and behold, there we go. It's actually, you know, thanks to the Cloud IBR guys, thanks to Greg, they've actually recovered my own great things with great tech. Well, it's one of the greatest podcasts for you that exists. If you want to go to g2wgt.com, please subscribe and follow for all of your personal great podcasting purposes, just to get a bit of a plug in there. Why not? But in this case, we've recovered that particular workload. So Cloud IBR has worked that quickly, that fantastically to recover the two machines that run that website, done in an instant on-demand recovery. So a really quick example of the power of Cloud IBR. And what you can see there is just basically stopping actual failover process. We're tearing down. So again, very important. At this point in time, we've only paid for what we need. And that's really important. So before this, we didn't pay for the hardware. We didn't pay for that server. We didn't pay for the ESX componentry, nothing. All we did was pay for it when it started up. Okay, very important. Now, one of the great things as well is that we've got a report. So here you can see, and this is great for Vito, just testing, providing reports to your tenants from an MSP perspective, but also just to see what's going on from a regulatory perspective. We can go in here and see what happens. So you can see that we've done this recovery test date on the 4th, so that's American dates, isn't it? So the 7th of April at this time, and it's given the background as to what's happened. So this is a great feature as well, just in terms of reporting capability that Cloud IBR has. So Vito, there we go. That was a really quick look at how simple Cloud IBR is and how easy it is to recover on demand. Now, again, the key component here is that we had this running off of a Veeam Vault repository, object storage repository. So from my perspective, that's just really easy, because if you can back up your workloads to a Veeam Vault or any object storage, then Cloud IBR will be able to tap into that to do the recovery. That's all you need. So going back to that point about how we bridge that gap, Vito, I think that's still key. If you've got object storage, you've got Veeam Vault, you're already more than halfway there to be able to you've already halfway there to be able to bring on your on-demand service.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe Vault by itself is recoverable. This just makes it extremely simple to recover with the push of a button, right? So it's
absolutely
it's automated recoverable Vault. I love that. And I love the podcast plug, Anthony. Thanks for that. Just to pull it all together, I think the key message from this entire presentation is Veeam wants to offer our partners and our customers choice in how they recover their data, how they prepare for a disaster recovery, and how our partners can offer DR as a service in a traditional format with lightning fast, mission critical RTOs and RPOs, and or provide a one button on demand DR for customers that have a budget and the ability to, wait minutes and hours of recovering as opposed to seconds and minutes. And, we want to provide our partners options. It uses object storage built on Veeam Data Cloud Vault. As we've shown you and talked about, it's automated bare metal provisioning of resources, so you're not having to maintain a data center. And the recovery is extremely fast, efficient, and cost-effective, and provides the flexibilities that our partners are looking for as they're providing services to their customers. So thanks for your time, Anthony. Any closing remarks?
It's been great. I think this, articulating the point again is that, I think organizations have to think about a more stringent way to bring back their workloads in this day and age of ransomware, fat fingering, just the threats that are out there, right? But even just everyday IT happenings, right? End user happenings, it can just happen where you need to bring back a workload. The ability to do this with on-demand recovery, leveraging Vault, leveraging our great partners with Cloud IBR, I think it's great. And if you're an MSP, please look at doing this yourself. I think it's, we don't want to say that you shouldn't go out and try and replicate this. Please do. In fact, we encourage that. Be innovative, look at the tech, put it all together. You can do it. If not, go to partners like Probax and Cloud IBR to consume it. That's all I have to say. Hopefully, we can get that percentage up to 86 or 90%.
Yeah, great. Thanks for your time, everybody. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Vito.